Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. Then Jesus reached the spot. He looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be with the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here I am. Here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham." So before we move on, let me give you a little historical context. In biblical times, people did not like tax collectors. They were often seen as traitors because they were workers of the Roman Empire, and so they weren't really well liked. Also, they were perceived as greedy and corrupt because a lot of the time they would take a lot more money than they were supposed to. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and this one label of tax collector, without anybody knowing him previously or anybody taking the time to understand him, put so many labels on his head. Sinner, traitor, outcast. These labels were given to Zacchaeus without him asking for them. And I'm sure many of you have been in the exact same situation. The unfortunate truth is that most, if not all of us, have been or will be in a situation where there are labels given to us without us asking, oftentimes in situations that we cannot control. Perhaps for you, it was because you were the new kid at school, or because you got that one math problem wrong in class, or because for some reason you'll never quite understand that one kid just decided to not like you. Maybe it was your hair or your glasses or something you wore. But whatever it was for you, it ended in a conclusion, a stereotype, and whether that was good or bad or true or false, you probably believed it. For me, it was because if others can see fault in me, then there must be fault. If I think something of myself and another person confirms that, then it must be true. And so that little voice in our head that tells us we aren't good enough is suddenly joined by another voice, and that doubt and resentment and embarrassment we feel towards ourselves gets louder. If I think I'm not enough and everyone else thinks I'm not enough, then surely I am not enough. And Zacchaeus probably felt the same way. He was short and pretty insignificant. He was disliked by everyone because he was a tax collector. He was labeled as a traitor and a sinner, and he was just altogether a reject, an outcast. And yet from all the people in the crowd, Jesus called out to him by name, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." And in that moment, nothing the people could say or do could take Jesus away from Zacchaeus. No matter how terrible their thoughts were of him, no matter what they thought of him, Jesus thought differently. Because in the end, Jesus' love for us is so much greater than the human mind could ever imagine. Jesus believes in you more than you could ever know. And what God says we are and God's plan for us is so much greater than we could ever imagine.